Puts it right around Huntley. He reaches. Oh, that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way. Sam Hubbard. The Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30. The 20. He will score.
To the end zone. Down the field. And it is deflected. And gone. Touchdown. A.J. Green.
Back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5. Touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up. It is good.
Corey Dillon. He's gone. The knockout punch. You're looking at it. 65 yards.
And then back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20, touchdown! And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Johnson's got it. Touchdown, Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Chase for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday edition of Chatterbox Bengals. Jacob Tissett, Craig Sandlin here after a divisional win. First win in the AFC North in 2024. First win in the AFC as a whole in 2024. Certainly happy to be here talking about that. First win in Cleveland since 2017. First win for Burrow and Zach Taylor up there. Certainly feels nice to be on the right side of this one. So many going the wrong way up at the mistake on the lake, but this time we get the win. So, Craig, how are we feeling? You were able to watch the film, break it all down. We have a bunch of the key plays loaded up in here for you, but how are you feeling now with a little bit to digest the win?
Look, I told you after the game that I wasn't overly excited about the win. I think that there's still room for improvement, and obviously we're going to talk about the injuries that popped up for the Bengals this past weekend and what their impact might be moving forward. Ultimately, look, I watched the film. Certainly some things that stood out to me as I watched it that are going to be questions moving forward, but ultimately you go into Cleveland, a place that you've really struggled, and you pick up a W. You get some momentum going. You've got a quote-unquote winning streak going now, and so big opportunity this weekend with the Eagles coming to town to really show that this team is for real and that, more importantly, this defense is for real.
I put win streak as the title. I don't know if that's a week too soon. What's your stance on that? Does it have to be 3 or just 2 words?
Two's a streak.
All right. We'll
Two's a
keep
streak.
it. We'll keep it then. Win streak for the Bengals. And there was a point this year I didn't know if it would ever come. But when it starts off like this, vibes are high. And then it was another, initial start to a game for the Bengals where you have a key big-time play and you feel like, oh, okay, here we go. We're going to get ready to just kill this team and show everyone what we're all about and have everything just click right off rip all the way till the final whistle. Wasn't the case as we go through, but on this first kickoff return, it certainly felt like it could be. I wasn't even settled in yet for the stream, and Charlie Jones takes it back and gets the Bengals their first points on the board. A wide open hole there at about the 35. This is what Sam Schwartzstein envisioned when he dreamed up the dynamic kickoff. This is the exact type of thing that they thought was going to happen more often than it has. You see how those players just wait until Charlie Jones catches the ball. That's the new rule. You have to wait until it's caught. And then right there, a little too late. I almost had it, Craig. I almost had it. But as you watch him bring it up, right there, look at how huge that hole is. Number 38 for the Browns, obviously right there on the hash, kind of in the middle, but Charlie basically right next to him is going to get around the corner there. And then look how massive that hole is with just Dustin Hopkins to beat standing up here on the logo. And that's exactly what he does. Breaks right through there, shows the speed, gets a little juke on the kicker. And that's one thing I did want to point out, Craig. The effort here by Dustin Hopkins. He seems more interested in grabbing a Gatorade than making a play on Charlie Jones, and Charlie takes it back for a touchdown to open the game. There was a lot of confusion on whether or not he stepped out, but a great kick return for Charlie Jones, who continues to provide value for the Bengals in that facet of the game. The first Bengals kickoff return touchdown since Brandon Wilson, and then a few years ago in Charlie's rookie year, he had the first Bengals punt return touchdown in quite some time as well. So he's ending droughts on the special teams.
Yeah, I know a lot of conversation on social media about Charlie Jones over the last several weeks and the value that he's bringing. Ultimately, you can see it from this angle, but you're going to see Akeem Davis, Gaither, and Jordan Battle absolutely seal the edges, leaving Tony Brown of the Browns unblocked. And then it all comes down to Drew Sample. If he closes out on this block, then you know that Charlie's gone. He does. Tony Brown kind of breaks down, unsure of which direction to go. Sample gets enough of him to slow him down and get him out of the way, and then it becomes just a foot race at that point. And don't let Pat McAfee see that clip, because he's certainly not going to play into his kickers or players too mantra.
No.
So
that one was not very good for the brand. Not at all. Not at all. No. But the offense had a few bright spots. I guess if you're going to take anything in a 14-point game for the offense, at least the two guys that you expect to score when the offense is going to put points up did get in the end zone. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both scoring touchdowns on Sunday in Cleveland. And first, Jamar's touchdown, enough to lead the league in receiving touchdowns. I do believe he is the league's leading receiver in yards, and just a beautiful back shoulder throw that sets up my favorite part of the entire highlight video, a step over by Jamar Chase over Greg Newsome. Just a disgusting celebration there, stepping over Newsome. Newsome gets up and complains about a flag that you can't see there, but as you see here on this play, no reason for a flag at all, no pass interference, just a dang good route and a great back shoulder ball by Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase for the touchdown.
Yeah, it's just exactly what you expect out of a quarterback and a wide receiver that are on the same page. When you get Yoshi motioning and you see the corner going with him, you automatically know you've got one-on-one coverage with Jamar Chase, and I think that Joe Burrow is going to take that shot every single time with Jamar Chase one-on-one with Greg Newsome. And he had that here. You could see it as soon as he got the snap. He was going that direction, and player and wide receiver and quarterback on the same exact page. They know they're going back shoulder, and just a beautiful ball. The other thing that was interesting on this play, I don't know if you can see it right there, Andre Yoshivas wide open.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
The confusion at the bottom of the screen with the corners, you can see that the
wide open
is showing for Denzel Ward to go with Andre, and Denzel Ward just doesn't do it. Leaves Andre wide open. But again, when you've got one-on-one coverage on Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow is going to take advantage of that every time. And again, the AI step over, just to add insult to injury, just takes it to a whole nother level.
That's right.
And you could hear there was video of the walk to the locker room after the game where Jamar Chase was talking about that. We won't repeat what was said, but
that's right.
Certainly knew in the moment that he was AI stepping over. That wasn't an accident by any means.
You might think it's crazy to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. A back shoulder throw like that, Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase, kind of as easy as that pitch and catch to Andre Yoshivas where he would have walked into the end zone. I mean, obviously, with a corner on his back hip and one guy wide open, you might initial reaction say, oh, Joe Burrow made the wrong read there. You got to give it to Yoshi for a walk-in touchdown. Would it have been a little easier? Maybe. But, I mean, that's a very basic throw for two guys that have been doing this for a long time. Back shoulder, right into the hands. No real contest anywhere in the arm or hand area. And then Newsome ends up on the ground and Chase steps over. I mean, that's just a phenomenal play. That's exactly what you want to see out of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. That's why we have them both. That's why we're going to hopefully, fingers crossed, make Jamar Chase the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL this offseason. But who knows? We'll see. We have another guy who's up after this season, going to be a free agent, and that's T. Higgins. He had a touchdown as well. This one, a little bit more of a big man play there, breaking through the middle, breaking the tackle, and then legging it out with some serious speed there at the end. That's something I think people forget about with T. Higgins a lot. We talk about the contested catch ability. We talk about the jumping and reaching the top point of the ball. But that breakaway speed is something that we don't get to see very often because we're throwing so many contested balls to him. And there we see it right there, catches the ball right about the 20 and then breaks one arm tackle and boom, he's gone. No one has a chance at him. Just another great play by T. Higgins, who has had a phenomenal season since returning from injury.
Yeah, and you're leaving Cameron Mitchell one-on-one with T. Higgins in that scenario and man coverage. Cameron Mitchell's giving him a good 7 yards of cushion there on a what was 3rd and 3. So at bare minimum, that's an easy first down every single time. You can see Yoshi clears his man out, and he just wide open spot for T. Higgins to settle in on that. But one-on-one, where you're expecting Cameron Mitchell to try and take on T. Higgins. T. Higgins is just too big, too strong for that, and makes the Browns pay for not giving him help on that play.
Zach Moss had faith in his guy's speed. Look when those arms go up. Those arms go up about the 13-yard line. Juwan Thornhill has somewhat of an angle here. That's having faith in your guys. You love to see that. Kudos to Zach Moss there putting his arms up. Maybe the best thing he did all day, but that was mean and uncalled for. But anyways, great play by T. Higgins on the touchdown there. And now moving to the defensive side of the ball, a guy somehow I feel like we haven't talked about enough this year, and I think you might agree on that one. Trey Hendrickson is just having an unbelievable season, on track to have his best season in stripes, his best season since getting to Cincinnati, which says a lot because he's already been much better here than anyone expected when we brought him in, and that didn't change at all on Sunday. He was a difference maker all day, 2 sacks and 5 QB hits on the day. Here's him just going to work this weekend.
Yeah, and I love Hendrickson. I mean, he can beat you in so many different ways. You see it here, just completely bull rushes Jedrick Wills. I mean, if we're being honest, Jedrick Wills had zero opportunity to beat Trey Hendrickson. We knew that was going to be, here he goes one-on-one with a guard. Again, just too strong. Doesn't get a chance to finish it there, but again, just you can see he's going to go with a stunt here, come inside, just again, absolutely dominates Deshaun Watson on that hit. And it just, every time you watch Trey Hendrickson on film, that one was just inexcusable from the Browns. I'm not really sure why that play didn't continue. That ball never hit the ground, which was weird, but doesn't really matter.
They called intentional grounding, right? Because but
it wasn't an incomplete pass. So
I guess they could have just hit him. Yeah.
And then the other piece here, he's chasing Deshaun Watson 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. I guess it was DTR at that point, 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage. But just, the get off from Trey Hendrickson, 0.85 seconds on the get off is one of the tops in the leagues. And then here, expecting a running back to chip on him and then sneaks out the screen pass and swats it down. And this was the
strength on that sack to get just that little bit of hands to bring down the quarterback, especially a big guy like Jameis Winston falling down with just a club to the chest. A special player Hendrickson is, and such a key piece to this defense. That's why, you saw our reactions when he got banged up earlier this year. He's so crucial to the success of the Bengals on the defensive side of the football. And if we all remember, which I'm sure everyone does, he had a contract dispute issue earlier this offseason where he threatened to hold out and even threatened retirement. And with the way this season has gone so far for Hendrickson, I think the Bengals should be the ones picking up the phone as soon as it ends and talking about locking him up for a longer term here in Cincinnati. I know he's getting older, and I know that 30-year deadline is something that the Bengals have been operating under for a long, long time, letting really good players walk when they reach that age. But if you're going to make an exception, he certainly seems to be playing even better year after year here, and as a guy I really don't want to see play anywhere else. I know that's preaching to the choir here with Bengals fans listening because everyone loves Trey Hendrickson here. Everyone has been thrilled to watch him grow and become the player that he is now, which is no doubt about it, a top 5 to 7 edge rusher in the league. He's one of the best in the league for sure. Probably going to be a Pro Bowler this year. Certainly going to do everything in our power as Bengals fans to get him there. And it was just another day of dominance really on Sunday for Trey Hendrickson. But he wasn't the only edge rusher who had a big time day. Sam Hubbard, interception, Craig. When we talk about Sam Hubbard dropping into coverage, it's usually cursing at Lou Anarumo for having such a wild idea. But in this scenario, it worked. And it wasn't just a complete fluke interception like I thought live. It was really good coverage, which you can see from this angle.
Yep, you can see Sam Hubbard kind of shows a little bit of rush, and then he drops back. And what happens is Cedric Tillman sees him dropping back into coverage and cuts off his route. And what that does is it leaves confusion on the pass in terms of who that ball was intended to, whether it was for Cedric Tillman or if it was for Jordan Akins, the tight end, who was right behind him. But what happens is you see Sam Hubbard drop back, Tillman has to cut off his route, and then you've got two receivers in the same zone. And then obviously once it gets tipped up, it's just an easy interception for Hubbard. But it all starts with the play design and with Sam Hubbard showing that rush and then dropping back off into coverage and having Cedric Tillman cut off his route and causing that confusion with the two receivers in the same area.
An athletic play by Hubbard to jump up and go get that football. If he would have just stood on the ground like a standard D lineman and waited for it to come to him, there's no way he gets that turnover. So round of applause to him for jumping up and going to get it. With a broken finger, no less, Craig. Another injury for Sam Hubbard that we don't know about.
I don't know how the Bengals have escaped any sort of penalty on this guy so far. We had the hamstring injury that apparently he was suffering through all camp, and now we find out that he broke his pinky finger.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that over the last 6 weeks he hasn't gotten any treatment on that
None.
pinky finger.
Zero.
That he doesn't need to be on the injury report. Like, absolutely crazy that they've kept him off. But yeah, like you said, quality play from him. And, we talked about it on Sunday. It feels like now that this defensive line is healthy, it's given Sam Hubbard an opportunity to play his role a little bit more. The offense hasn't been able to focus in as much on Trey Hendrickson and on him. And so both of them are eating along with the interior defensive line. And as a whole, this unit feels much more cohesive now that they are healthy. And obviously it's showing on tape.
For sure. I mean, Hendrickson, big game. Hubbard, massive play. Miles Murphy didn't want to get left out, and how could we after he makes a PBU and hits us with a seatbelt celebration? I mean, what a time to be alive for the former first-round pick. Out here, out of a 3-point stance, running out there, covering David Njoku, who, that's no slouch at tight end. That's a top 10 tight end in the league, maybe even higher than that. And Miles Murphy, from a 3-point stance, takes him into the end zone, breaks up the pass, and then hits you with one of the best big man celebrations you've ever seen right here with the seatbelt. That's just incredible, Craig. I wanted to make sure we got this one in here because as a former D lineman myself, I know how cool this play would feel to make, and I'm sure Miles Murphy was over the moon after knocking this ball out of the air in the end zone.
Yeah, he was definitely feeling it, and shout out to him, great play.
Right.
And like you said, David Njoku, one of the top receivers on this team for sure, going one-on-one with him in the flat like that. Yeah. Really good play and just shows the athleticism of some of these guys that maybe you don't really think about a lot of times.
A second incomplete pass I added in here to the key plays category, which you might think is weird. Why are we showing incomplete passes? That one obviously just a little bit of fun, but this one I think is key to see how far this defense has come since the first few weeks. After the Patriots game where the Bengals defense played horribly and the missed tackles continued to mount through the first few weeks of the season, Lou Anarumo continued to talk about how undisciplined this defense was and how poor the tackling and everything along those lines were. Well, what's a better case of showing discipline than staying home on a trick play? The Browns run a trick play here early in the game. Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Well, Nick Chubb at quarterback here. Hands it off to Elijah Moore, pitches it to Deshaun Watson, who fires deep, and the Bengals are not fooled at all. Everyone stays home. Geno Stone does his job tracking the receiver to the corner of the end zone. I can't tell who that corner is down in front. DJ Turner, phenomenal play to stay in the pocket and not be drawn up by that reverse motion to the other side. Stays in that chest pocket of the receiver and is able to make a play on the ball. On a ball that's pretty well thrown. I mean, if the wide receiver has any chance here without the guys in his face, he'll certainly have a chance to make a play on the ball here. A lot of times on these deep trick plays, you see balls sailed out of the end zone or something like that. That's not the case here. This is really a great defensive play and something that I think definitely would have burnt the Bengals earlier this season.
Yeah, I mean, you can see all 6 DBs and linebackers all sticking with the play, none of them crashing and hitting too hard on the potential run. That's a heads up play. And I don't know if it was something that they saw on tape or if something that they were expecting Cleveland to do with Deshaun being out in the flank like that. But certainly a good play from the defense and a heads up play to stay home.
Geno Stone hurt later in the game, and we're going to get to injury updates and what all that means for the Bengals as we move forward after we finish this key plays section. But another big-time injury that has a lot of Bengals fans worried is the loss of Orlando Brown. Got hurt early in the game and missed some time. And Cody Ford filled into those shoes. Craig, his PFF grade was really poor, but you said that you thought he might have deserved a little better.
Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and act like Cody Ford's deserving of being our everyday starting left tackle.
Right.
But I think as I watched the film, what I saw is that he did enough, right? And so you can see here he's going up against Myles Garrett, again, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. And look, he's got help. He knows he's got help. Did he have a great play there? No, but he gets enough of him to keep Myles Garrett off of Joe Burrow and give Joe Burrow enough time to air it out in what should have been a pass interference call, but we won't get into that one too much.
Jeez.
But you're going to see, I mean, I think I put together a minute and a half or 2 minutes of Cody Ford here. And, I think he held his own and he went up against a really good Cleveland pass rush. And as I watched it, I was expecting to see a lot worse. And I don't know why the same place.
Craig, this clip's 29 seconds. It's not 2 minutes long.
Oh, well, I don't know what happened to the rest of it then. Well, I put together a nice 2-minute clip of Cody Ford, and you're just going to have to enjoy a 29-second clip of Cody Ford.
He recovered against Myles Garrett. We'll take it. That's good stuff. No, you're absolutely right, though. Cody Ford, he showed enough, and I think that's kind of been the hope for Bengals tackles all year is that, when Amarius Mims went out and Ford went over there, it was just hopefully he can do enough. Honestly, when Trent Brown went out and Amarius Mims came in to right tackle, the original hope was hopefully he can do enough and look okay enough. And obviously Mims has looked a little bit better than okay, but now with Orlando Brown out with tennis knee, Craig, he's out with tennis knee. Good thing we're not asking him to play tennis. Hopefully he can come back soon. But Zach Taylor said that it was looking like doubtful or questionable, but not look likely that he's going to play this weekend against the Eagles, which means it probably will be Cody Ford at that left tackle position against an Eagles team that gave up 9 sacks or had 9 sacks this past weekend against the Giants. So a really strong pass rush for the Eagles. And Cody Ford's going to have his work cut out for him. He did okay in his time in this game, but certainly going to have to step it up. You said you deserved more than the 2.5, I believe it was, 2.5 pass block grade by PFF.
Something crazy. I think he got an overall grade of 3.9 or something like that.
Splendid.
This past week.
Love to see that.
It was not good, to say the least. But yeah, when I watched it, again, I'm not going to sit here and act like he was great by any means, but when you watch back the film, he doesn't get beat that many times. I think I counted 3 really total snaps that I felt like he really got beat on, and he played 41. So, ultimately, when you're going up against Myles Garrett regularly, I'm okay with that out of him. And the thing that was certainly stood out to me, though, and I wish I would have sent this to you, apparently, but I'll have to put it out on my x.com later. There were some plays where it didn't feel like he was on the same page in terms of his assignment. And I think ultimately that's going to be the biggest question moving forward is, are him and Cordell Volson on the same page in terms of protection and who's responsible for who? Because there were certain plays where it felt like he was going after the wrong guy, or, he was indecisive in his decisions. There was one play where it was a running play to his side, and he almost looks like he's dropping back into a pass block. Yeah. Like he goes nowhere. He goes 3 or 4 shuffle steps and goes nowhere. And he's going up against Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett is able to stop Chase Brown for no gain or for 1 yard. There was another one where he got to the second level and him and Cordell Volson end up blocking the same player. And then the one that went unblocked ended up getting the stop in the backfield, So I'll put together this little clip again and get it back out for everybody to view. But you'll see there were some plays where I felt like he did enough, including multiple on Myles Garrett. And then there were some plays where certainly there's things that he's got to address, but I don't think it was as bad as the PFF grade says. And I'm sure, I'm interested in your take. When you were watching it, I don't necessarily remember saying, oh shoot, Cody Ford missed that block many times during the game. So, I think the best case scenario here is that we don't have to worry about him as much as we think.
Right.
Worst case scenario is that we just got lucky and they started calling plays that worked out for him, quick releases, and Joe Burrow was throwing the ball rather quickly in this game, so he didn't have to block for super long, which certainly played into it as well, I'm sure. But nonetheless, I expected a lot worse when I was watching it, and when I went back and watched it, I didn't actually think that Cody Ford did quite as bad as his
That's good.
as his grade would say. And for what it's worth, I want to make sure that I point this out. It looks like PFF has revised his grade now, so he now has a 21.7 on the pass block.
That's at least a real number.
51.7 on the run block. So
all right.
Overall 42.8, much better
than 5.
What we initially thought. They must have gone back.
How do they get it that wrong?
I don't know.
That's crazy.
I'd really love to get someone from PFF on the show sometime to
that'd
talk
be really
about
fun.
their grading and how that works. I don't know if they ever do that or not, but that would be fun to hear. But yeah, I mean, Cody Ford, not as bad as expected. Cody Ford overall grade 42.8. For what it's worth, Cordell Volson 44.1. So the biggest question is going to be that left side.
Yeah.
And defenses, especially these Eagles, now that they know that they're potentially going up against that left side, are, I would guess, going to draw up a lot of creative plays to take advantage of those mismatches.
Yeah.
And that left side is going to be tested a lot this coming weekend.
And that is obviously because Orlando Brown is out. The Bengals dodged a bullet earlier this season with Amarius Mims having an ankle injury and able to return in that very game after being carted off the field. Orlando Brown hurting this one, but seems like at the most he's just going to miss this Eagles game. We're on the same page there. That's what we're seeing. It's just going to be this Eagles game, if anything, for Brown. Taylor said he's very confident that it's not an injury that's going to linger or cause problems as the season progresses, which is great to hear because Orlando Brown's been putting together a career year here in Cincinnati this season and doing exactly what we signed him to do and making a difference on the offensive line that's been one of the best pass-blocking offensive lines in football. And without him, who knows what they are. Hopefully Cody Ford can continue to be good enough, I think was the words we decided to call it. And but I do think Orlando Brown masks a lot of Cordell Volson's what he can't do, a lot of his ineptitudes, and with Cody Ford next to him, Cody Ford has to focus on Cody Ford. I think Orlando Brown can do a little bit of, all right, is Volson okay? All right, now I'll take my guy. Maybe not against Myles Garrett, but against most edge rushers in the NFL. I'm very, very confident that Orlando Brown's helping out Volson a lot there on that left side, and we're not going to have that ability with Cody Ford over there. These going to be two guys that are trying to do their own thing and very focused on their own job, which is obviously fine, and that's how I'm sure most teams operate because most teams don't have an Orlando Brown. But when you do and you lose them, it can send ripple effects through the entire offensive line. Now, I'm sure Ted Karras is going to spend more time talking to Volson in the pre-play than Kappa, and then Kappa's going to be talking to Mims, who is a rookie in and of himself starting his first handful of games. This is going to be an injury that affects the entire offensive line in ways a lot differently than just can Cody Ford block their edge rusher. It's a ripple effect because this unit, it's exactly that. It's a unit. It's not just one guy, and we can talk about Cody Ford's pass block or run block rating, but it's going to all come down to how they operate together. And it's going to be the first time that Cody Ford's played left tackle with this unit next to him. So we'll see how that works out. I would be interested to see if they would consider moving Amarius Mims over there. Ford obviously has been a better right tackle in his career than left tackle, but I also fully understand the keeping the future cornerstone of your offensive line at the position that he's meant to play and not messing with that whole thing, because as many casual fans might think it is easy to switch from the right to left side of tackle, it is not, and that's something that anyone that's ever played in the NFL has said time and time again. That is a very, very hard switch from the right side to the left side. So if Mims is comfortable over there, I certainly think that it makes sense to leave him there. I've just seen that brought up a ton on Twitter and in the chat and all that good stuff about moving Mims to that side, since obviously it is Burrow's blind side. But I think it makes a lot of sense to leave the young tackle in the position that he's comfortable in. But I know you just said that you thought Ford did enough on Sunday to give you a little bit of confidence moving forward, but we've talked about it before. Do you still think the Bengals should go out and make a move for a tackle? I know that we're not necessarily talking about a starter caliber player, and then you get into the conversation of, well, is the guys that we have on the roster good enough when we're talking about backups? But with a player like Amarius Mims, who's had injury concerns all through college, and then now Orlando Brown having a soft tissue injury that could certainly linger. I know they said they're confident it will not, but certainly could linger as the season goes on. You always worry about a knee injury with an offensive lineman. Do you think that it raises the chances the Bengals go out and look at an offensive lineman, or do you still think we're just going to sit with what we have in the building?
I find it hard to believe that they're going to spend capital to go out and sign a guy if they believe that Orlando Brown will be back in a couple of weeks, like they're saying.
That's
now,
fair.
The problem is that based on the research I'm seeing, and obviously I'm not going to act like a doctor, I'm not going to act like I have any sort of real insight into this, but what I saw is that recovery on this injury can take anywhere from a few days to up to like 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So it's really a question of like,
they made it sound like
really
this was just going to be
I know.
quick.
So I think part of it obviously is that the research I'm seeing is probably the average Joe, right? The average
That's
Joe
fair.
might take 4 to 8 weeks to recover to this versus Orlando Brown Jr., who's a professional athlete and has the highest quality treatment possible, right? So I think it's hard to believe that they're going to go out and sign another tackle. I don't know what they've seen in Devin Cochran over the course of the last several weeks in practice to know whether or not that they believe that he could be a certified backup in this scenario. I definitely don't think that I saw enough in preseason to justify him being a long-term solution. But if it's only a week or two, I'm not really sure that I would expect the Bengals to do anything about this other than wait it out and hope that they can get Orlando Brown back as quickly as they're making it seem like he might be back. Now, this is, for full transparency, both injuries that we're talking about felt or feel potentially worse than what we're talking about now, right?
Yes.
So Orlando Brown, when it happens, we see the report right after the game that, hey, it's this tennis leg thing. I start to do my research. I'm seeing these 4 to 8 weeks. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. We need to go out and sign somebody. Cody Ford probably can't be the every down guy, whatever. Geno Stone, on the other hand, many thought, and we're comparing the injury to what they saw out of Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
And many thought that Geno Stone was going to be done for the year. And then we come and find out that he's walking around the locker room after the game and that he might play this week. And so I don't know. I certainly hope that we don't have a red scenario where these injuries are either hidden or downplayed versus what they actually are. We saw it with the Reds this year where team doctors, kept guys out for several days and basically ate up a roster spot. But long story short is that if Orlando Brown Jr. only misses one game, that is by far the best case scenario. And if Geno Stone plays this weekend, obviously that is also best case scenario for this team. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Geno Stone seemingly coming into his own, and it looked nasty when he went down on the field, and they immediately put his leg in the air cast. But like you said, reported walking around the locker room after the game. Could not be luckier, it seems, so far this year with guys getting hurt and seemingly dodging the bullet. I mean, like I said earlier, Amarius Mims was carted off the field in his second career start and came back in the game. So the Bengals have been very, very lucky when it comes to injuries so far this season. And hopefully they can stay that way because it does feel like this defense is starting to figure it out a little bit. And as the offense continues to be healthy, we hope that they're going to be able to do the same thing. But that's where I want to take this next, Craig. Through the first few weeks of the season, I feel like Bengals fans were very, very confident in what the identity of the team was. I'm not saying they were confident in that identity resulting in a lot of wins, but I felt like Bengals fans were all on the same page about what this team was going to be, and that was going to be 30 points or a loss for basically the entire season. And it's Joe Burrow throws for 405 touchdowns, and we're still in a coin flip to win or lose a football game, and everyone had kind of became okay with that fact for 2024 after 4 weeks. But, now, after the last 2 weeks, the offense scoring 17 and then 14 points in back-to-back weeks, I think there's a lot of questions about what the identity of this team is. Because it isn't a gaudy offense and a terrible defense. Because I know it's Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson, but this defense has looked pretty good in the last 2 weeks. I don't want to get too far over my skis playing two bad quarterbacks, but if the offense doesn't have to score 30 every week, how does that change the expectations, which results in the change in play calling and the pressure on Joe Burrow and all the different leadership conversations we had after the slow start? If he can focus on the offense because the defense is clicking, what is the identity of this team? We want to run the ball 30 times some games, 10 times another, and then this week we give Chase Brown 15 carries and Zach Moss 6 after basically splitting all season. I'm starting to wonder if the Bengals even know what their identity is because they won't commit to anything.
Well, I think that's the most frustrating part for me, right? Is that it doesn't feel like they're committed to any specific type of approach here. And offensively, specifically, I mean, we know what Joe Burrow can be, especially with the two weapons that he has at his disposal. And then we try to get in these scenarios where we're trying to, basically milk the clock, and all we do is run the ball 9 straight times. And it just doesn't feel like that's the appropriate approach if that's who we want to be. Now, if you want to be a balanced team and you want to have the ability to run the ball when the clock is expiring and you want to be able to try and put games away, that's totally fine. But when you're running the ball 9 times over the last 2.5 drives, after only running the ball 6 times the entire game before that, that's not going to set you up well for success. And it just leads to scenarios where we saw where those run plays essentially go nowhere.
That's right.
Because the defense knows what's coming. And it just feels like whether it's an identity issue or just a big moment issue for Zach Taylor, I'm not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of the day, this team is best when it utilizes its explosive players. And I know that we went out and got Zach Moss to be able to be that consistent back, to be able to fall forward, to be able to do all these things. But Chase Brown matches what this team really needs out of the backfield in terms of explosiveness. And he can give it to you on the ground, but he can also give it to you out of the passing game. And it doesn't feel like we're really utilizing him in the passing game as much as I would expect us to, especially when we really haven't had a wide receiver 3 or tight end 1 step up. We thought we'd get that out of Gesicki. We saw a little bit early on in the season where he was getting more catches than he is now, but even that seems to have been changing. So I don't know. Ultimately, I find it hard to believe that the Bengals are going to be able to rely on T. Higgins and Jamar Chase for the rest of the season. Eventually, somebody's probably going to shut one of them down and kind of force you to go elsewhere. But it just feels like this team, doesn't, like you said, it just doesn't have the identity that you would expect. And, we also talk about the defensive side of the ball. And, at the beginning of the year, they were giving up 30 points a game, including to teams that you wouldn't expect them to give up 30 points a game to. And over the last 2 weeks, the Browns and the Giants, you hold them both substantially lower point outputs, but it's still a question of, okay, is that because your defense is better or is that because you're playing the Giants and the Browns?
Right. No, and definitely valid questions. And you talked about the lack of a third target right there. And through the first 3 weeks, 2 weeks with T. Higgins out, 1 week with him playing clearly hampered and not at 100%, the Bengals were third to last in the NFL in terms of target percentage going to their top 3 receivers, that at that time being Andre Yoshivas, Jamar Chase, and Mike Gesicki. At that point in time, I thought, and I know a lot of Bengals fans were on the same page as me, thinking, oh, okay, well, it's just no faith in a single guy outside of Jamar Chase. We're that low because we're just facilitating the ball to all these other ancillary pieces. And when T. Higgins gets back, we're going to see those 2 guys take a massive chunk of the catches. A third wide receiver will emerge, and we'll be just fine and return back to the top of that stat where they've been for most of the last few years, with Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase usually leading the league or close to it in terms of targets to your top 3 receivers. The Bengals are still near the bottom of that list, if not at the bottom of that list at this point. And it's not because they're not targeting T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It's because there literally is not a third option. There's not a third receiving option on the Bengals. The third leading receiver on the Bengals this past week was Zach Moss with 3 catches for 30 yards. How is there not a third wide receiver? And we don't even see Jermaine Burton take snaps. And I'm about to be done complaining about him for the whole season, because if he can't get on the field when there's not a single wide receiver producing, then what am I complaining about? So I'm done with that. But Andre Yoshivas has to do more. He's out there all day, basically. All day. Kick to whistle. He's out there on the field as the third wide receiver. And he doesn't do anything. 0 catches. Only 1 target. And we just showed a play where Burrow found Chase in the end zone and Yoshivas was wide open. Would have had a touchdown, would have had some yards, and we probably wouldn't have even brought it up. But that would have only been 1 catch. And then I would have been able to do my whole normal spiel where Andre Yoshivas only has 1 or 2 catches and they go for a touchdown. Why can't he do more? So it does still apply. Where is he? What happened to all the conversation during camp that he might be a wide receiver too? Oh, Andre Yoshivas, he'll replace T no problem in a year. What happened to that? Where's that guy? And why haven't we seen it?
It's a great question. I don't know.
I want answers, Craig.
I mean, on the year now, 14 catches for 190 or 189 yards, 13 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns. Wow, excuse me.
13 touchdowns would be crazy.
Look, and that would be crazy, wouldn't it? We went out and we signed Mike Gesicki, expecting, and you talked about this a lot. Mike Gesicki's a guy that you kind of thought maybe could slot into essentially a slot receiver role more so than, a tight end per se. Even he hasn't really gotten to that point. I mean, 18 catches on the year for 180 yards, just not really using him. And I think ultimately part of it is we have to recognize that when you have 2 stud receivers like you have, you may not need them. And maybe that's part of it, right? As Joe Burrow has so much faith in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that those are always going to be his primary reads. And if they continue to win on routes, then he's never going to get to his 2nd, 3rd, 4th reads and having to dump off to Mike Gesicki or try to take a shot on Andre Yoshivas. Now, when I say that, though, what I would like to see at some point, and I'm not advocating for it in a certain position or a certain time or anything like that, but ultimately what that does is it opens it up that eventually you should take a shot to Andre Yoshivas, which is what they did early in the season, right?
Yeah.
The problem with the fact that they haven't utilized Jermaine Burton is that you aren't opening up those opportunities down the line to potentially take those same shots, right?
Yeah.
So Andre Yoshivas is wide open down the sideline. We don't look at him. Eventually, defenses are going to continue to take that similar approach where they're not necessarily paying as close attention to Andre Yoshivas as maybe they should. And it'll probably result in looks like he got this past weekend.
Yeah.
Eventually, Joe Burrow will take advantage of those as he sees these on tape more often. And as the play design goes that direction, I would expect to see more Andre Yoshivas down the road. They went to him several times in the first couple of weeks. And then obviously over the last couple of weeks, they haven't had to go to him as much, only 1 target this past weekend. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you went from him having to be one of your top 2 receivers and he was getting 6 targets, 4 targets, 7 targets. And now that they have their full,
of his 24 targets this season, 17 of them came in the first 3 weeks.
Yep.
He has not existed since T. Higgins got back to 100%. He's been nothing. 1 catch, 2 catches. That's absolutely right. He hasn't had to be. These other 2 guys have gone off. I mean, Jamar 2 weeks ago had 150 yards? And that's, of course, there's not a whole lot more to go around when you have guys putting up those kind of numbers. But not having to be...
Mike Gesicki's following the same pattern. Of his 22 targets this year, he had 18 in the first 3.
They don't have to be better. I think this Bengals offense can be fine if they're not better. I think there's plenty of space in this offense for Andre Yoshivas to have more targets than this, and I blame him for not getting open enough. I think if Andre Yoshivas is 20% open and Jamar Chase is 10% open, Joe Burrow's throwing the ball to Jamar Chase. Andre Yoshivas has to win by wider margins than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins does to get the ball. That's a fact. Joe Burrow trusts the other 2 guys more, and he should. They're damn good players. So maybe that's why he's not looking Yoshivas's way. I get that, and I've seen that sentiment as well, but I just have a hard time believing that your wide receiver 3 in an offense that we thought 2 weeks ago was going to be the only chance at winning games, your third best receiving option, can't get open more than a time or two a game, can't be the read more than a time or two a game. I just have a hard time believing that's the best case scenario. And maybe I'm spoiled with having Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase all here together and having 3 very, very good receivers on the same team. Maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe I'm asking for something that doesn't exist. I mean, look at the other teams around the league. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill in Miami. Who's their wide receiver 3? 50-year-old Odell Beckham? Philadelphia, you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They just traded a pick to try to get a third wide receiver in the offseason, Jahan Dotson, and he stinks. So maybe I'm asking for something that doesn't exist. I'd take Andre Yoshivas over both of those guys in a second. But I just feel like maybe it's being over-optimistic. Maybe I have myself to blame for what I thought Andre Yoshivas could do as the third wide receiver this year, because I really did think he could be something really exciting for the future, and I just don't know that he can get much higher than where he is right now, at least at a consistency level, because I just haven't seen it.
Well, here's what I'll say, and I don't know all the details on this, so I'll just kind of put some stats out there, and you can do with it as you want. Okay, we saw the play where Andre Yoshivas was literally uncovered, right?
Right.
According to Next Gen Stats, his average receiver separation against the Browns this past weekend, what do you think it was? Keeping in mind that the league average is 2.97.
I was going to say, because you're asking that, I feel like it's not good. But with that play, it has to be high. I'll go like
what if I told
3.
You, what if I told you that his average receiver separation, according to Next Gen Stats this past weekend, was 0.43?
How is it not above league average when you're running with 20 yards of separation on one play? How does that math make sense, Craig?
Listen, I don't know. But if that
counted, I guessed 3.
It had to be.
It wasn't even 1. Oh, brother.
0.43. It almost.
I can't believe
wrong,
that.
Right? Like
it has to be. Because if he had 10 yards of separation on that one play, there's no way he even ran that many routes. That's insanity. But that goes to exactly what I'm saying. Does he have to be better? Maybe not. Should he be better? Probably.
I mean, if you're going to get 0.43 yards of separation per route, I think you have to be better.
Well, if he's going to get...
I think... But ultimately, here's the thing, right? Is if he is averaging 0.43 and he had that one play where he was wide open, it tells me that he's blanketed every other play.
Other play.
And so Joe Burrow probably doesn't even look his way anymore because he doesn't trust that he's getting open, right? So the few times that we've seen Andre Yoshivas be targeted over the last 3 or 4 weeks has been mainly on scramble plays and on broken plays, right? So maybe that's just a fact where maybe he's better in the scramble drill than he is one-on-one trying to beat cover men, but according to Next Gen Stats, he just wasn't good enough versus Jamar Chase at 3.59, Mike Gesicki 3.82 though.
That's great.
Eric All 3.07. So yeah, I don't know what to really make of it other than the fact that Andre Yoshivas wasn't good enough.
Well, just because of that stat, I'm back to being mad about Tremaine Burton, so now we've gotten nowhere. Thank you for that, Craig. And speaking about getting somewhere, I think we might finally be getting somewhere with this defense. Back-to-back weeks of much, much better play than what we saw through the first 3 weeks. I know it's Daniel Jones. I know it's Deshaun Watson, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and Jameis Winston. But still, these are NFL players. We're getting stops. We're holding teams below 2 scores. I mean, 14 points and 10 points in back-to-back weeks. You win those games every single time. And that's all I've ever wanted with this team is a league average defense, and holding the Giants to 10 and the Browns to 14 screams that we might even be a little bit better than league average. The Browns haven't scored 20 all year. My main concern was that we were going to be the first notch on their belt in that sense. 14 points. 7-0 with Deshaun Watson, but he got hurt, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson scores right away. We shut him down for the entire game until he gets hurt after that short drive taking over for Watson, and then Winston leads a long one at the end of the game. This defense played very well. It fell apart a little bit at the end, but my main thing from this game was the run defense, and something that we saw a little bit earlier in the year start to peak out. And I'm going to talk about the Ravens game, and I know Derrick Henry finished that game with like 95 yards and a touchdown or something along those lines. He had 40 yards and no touchdowns in the first half of that game. And then the Bengals turn around and go against Nick Chubb, a guy who's dominated them his entire career. He has 10 carries for 22 yards. Unbelievable defensive game in the middle against a guy who I didn't think was healthy. I didn't think was going to get a full workload, and then gets far more than double the carries of anyone else in that Browns backfield. So they certainly thought he was healthy and ready to go, and the Bengals defense bottled him up for 2 yards a carry. I'm starting to get a little bit excited about this defense and how they're headed. Big test this week against an offense with a lot of weapons in Philadelphia, but how much, if anything, are you taking away from these last 2 games defensively?
Well, I think I'm a little nervous about this week, and I'll tell you why.
Absolutely.
I think ultimately what it comes down to is that the Bengals have shut down the run game, like you mentioned. The Browns this week ran 21 times for 77 yards, but 44 of those yards came from Dorian Thompson-Robinson on 3 carries. He had a long of 34. So if you take away that 34-yard scramble, they ran 20 times for 43 yards. That's great. They forced him to throw the ball a lot. They end up throwing 52 times, completing 31 for 259 yards. The problem is that you faced 4 basically very bad quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks. And most quarterbacks are going to tear you apart. We just talked about Andre Yoshibas's average receiver reception. Now, if you look at the Browns' average receiver reception, they had 5 wide receivers running multiple routes. Jerry Jeudy was last out of the 5 at 3.46 yards of separation per route. Cedric Tillman, 3.51. Njoku, 3.61. Jordan Akins, 6.3 yards of separation per route. Elijah Moore, 6.32. This defense, if I'm being honest, has done a good job of shutting down the run game, and that's been great. I'm a little nervous when they go up against a good passing offense and what that's going to do, because I don't feel like this linebacking core is athletic enough to cover tight ends. We've seen tight ends kind of tear this team apart a little bit over the last few weeks. And I don't know that the secondary is good enough to cover quality wide receivers either. So
and they got 2 of them.
Again, and they have 2 of them. So going back, and a good tight end in Dallas Goedert
if he plays.
So again, going back to what I'm saying, like I'm optimistic based on what I'm seeing, but I'm reserving my right to change it based on what I'm really seeing on tape and on the stats.
That. Okay.
Because right now I'm not so sure that we can really rely on this defense to continue this run.
It's been good to see, though, because there was legitimately a point this season where I thought every single team was going to be able to score 20 to 30 points on this Bengals defense. And they've shown signs of life, I guess is the way I'll put it. And because I say it every time I start talking about this defense, because I want to get really excited. And then I remember it's Daniel Jones and that ragtag group of Browns quarterbacks. But this is still something that we didn't expect at any point in the season, and we've gotten it back-to-back weeks. Good defensive play. Point totals below 20, 2 touchdowns to the Browns, and then 10 to the Giants, and it's winnable football. And we're winning games where Joe Burrow is not playing his best, and that is incredibly reassuring as this season progresses, and we really do have to win more games than not. I mean, that's putting it lightly. We have to win the vast majority of the remaining games in order to have a chance to make a run or do anything special towards the back end of this one, and to be able to get wins against bad teams where your quarterback doesn't put on his best game. That's what good teams do. That's what championship contenders do. And I know a few weeks ago, Joe Burrow said that this team's not a championship contender. But I'd like to ask him again after this Philly game. I think they're trending in the right direction for sure. The offense is scoring when they need to. I don't want to say they can score at will, because they absolutely cannot. They've struggled for many long periods of time during this season so far, and especially in these last 2 games. But when they've needed to, this offense has been able to get the job done. Joe Burrow had to score 2 touchdowns this week. He did it bang, bang with relative ease on both drives. I'm very, very confident in this team, really more confident at this point than I have been at any time since the Patriots game kicked off.
I think one thing that's giving me a little bit of hope is that for the third straight week, this Bengals defensive line unit got a new season high PFF grade as a unit for the third straight week. So we're seeing that unit continue to improve week after week after week as they continue to get healthy and get back to full strength, which is ultimately, like we've talked about time and time again, going to help the back end of that defense because they're not going to have to cover for as long as they normally would. This Philadelphia team is not afraid to take shots, though. So if the Bengals front four can't get home and put pressure on Jalen Hurts and he has time to throw the ball, A.J. Brown can beat you deep. Devontae Smith can beat you deep. Absolutely. So this team is going to have to get home and put pressure on Jalen Hurts in order to try and keep them in check. The problem is that they've got Saquon Barkley too.
Yeah.
And so if you get out of your attack lanes and you lose contain, Saquon Barkley can also beat you. And so this is the biggest test, at least in my opinion, that this Bengals defense is going to face, because they can just beat you so many different ways. Very similar to the Ravens game where Lamar Jackson can beat you on his feet. Derrick Henry, obviously, in the running game. And then they've got the Ravens just don't necessarily have the weapons on the outside as the Eagles do. The Eagles add in two strong weapons in the receiving core that take it to that next level. And if you gave up the amount of points that you gave up to the Ravens, I can only imagine what you're going to do to this Eagles team. So we certainly can't afford to have another 41-point offensive put out from the Eagles, because I don't know that this offense right now is built to go blow for blow with an offense like that.
If Cedric Tillman and Elijah Moore are getting roughly 4 yards of separation on the average play, I'm very, very nervous to play Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. But I've seen enough out of this Bengals defense over the last 2 weeks to at least be excited to watch the game. There was a point this season where if you told me this Bengals defense was playing Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith, I would have said, all right, Reed, have fun streaming this one on Sunday. I'm not watching it because it's going to get ugly, but I at least have confidence, and that's all you can ask for at this point in the season after the start the Bengals have, is confidence and an enjoyment in the NFL season. I think a lot of Bengals fans are back on that side of it, and you have a chance here with a stretch of games to keep that ball rolling. We obviously are talking about the Eagles, and we'll go more in depth on a preview for that on Thursday night at 7 p.m. right here on Chatterbox. But after the Eagles, you play the Raiders, and maybe old Cincinnati legend Desmond Ridder coming back to town, signed to their active roster today with Aiden O'Connell going to IR. It's going to be him or Minshew in 2 weeks. We'll see what happens there. And then you go to the Ravens, to the Chargers, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns, the Broncos, and the Steelers again to wrap up the season. That's an incredibly winnable schedule. Incredibly winnable schedule. Any given Sunday in the NFL, I know. We've seen this team be incredibly up and down, incredibly bipolar throughout this season. The offense being really, really good and then really bad. The defense allowing 40 points and then 10 points to the Giants, and you don't really know why. So I guess you can't chalk anything up as a guaranteed win. But looking ahead at this schedule, it seems like the Bengals still have everything in front of them, even with starting the season the way they did. I'm incredibly optimistic. I said my point was 5-5 through week 10. Craig, I know you said we have to win these next 3. Is that still the bar we're working with to get you all the way back in?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I look at the schedule, and I agree with you that there are many winnable games on this schedule. The Eagles is going to be tough. The Ravens is going to be tough. The Chargers didn't look great last night, but I still don't think that they're a great matchup for this Bengals team. They don't have the weapons on the outside to really stretch this defense out, but their running game has been solid. The Steelers, look, I'm not a believer in Russ. I think that he got bailed out by George Pickens on multiple plays this past weekend. I didn't think he looked nearly as good as some people think he did. On paper, he looked much better than he did actually watching the game. The Cowboys are going to be tough, whether they're playing well or not right now. I think they're going to be tough. The Browns are going to play you tough again. The Broncos are surprisingly better than you would expect this year. And then you end with the Steelers again. And I feel like you've got to continue this momentum going. And I think that if you allow this Eagles team to beat you, especially if you allow them to beat you handedly, what you took as this confidence that you gained over the last 2 weeks just goes back to, oh, well, maybe this is the team that we thought that they were 2 weeks ago. And maybe we just got overconfident after beating 2 bad teams. I don't know. I still want to see 3 straight wins. I still want to see them beat the Eagles. I want to obviously see them beat the Raiders. I don't have any faith in the Raiders right now. No. And then that Ravens matchup is another big one. And so, yeah, look, if they can come out of this stretch here and win 3 more, I'm going to be all the way back in. I think I saw the odds for the Bengals to make the playoff are at like -122 right now.
Yep, it was a pick'em. It was a pick'em when I checked before the show.
Yeah, so the AFC is bad. So I want to recognize that. I think that right now technically they're in 9th place, so they're sitting on the outside. But like as you look around the league, they've still got every opportunity to make this playoff team. I mean, the teams ahead of them right now, the Colts, I don't believe in. Anthony Richardson has looked like trash. The Steelers, I still think they're frauds. I don't think that Russ is going to be able to carry them. Their running game is really good and their defense is pretty good, but I just don't have a lot of faith there. The Broncos with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix, I don't know that they're good enough to take it to that next level, and they've got a difficult schedule still. And then the AFC East, just outside of the Bills, hasn't done anything. They're next.
Tua coming back.
We're not going to get into this.
Okay.
We're not going to get into this.
Okay.
I'm not going there.
All right.
I'm not going
All
there.
right.
Watching that press conference made me so upset. I'm not going there.
Fair enough.
Looking at the playoff picture, the road to the playoffs is there, and the schedule lines up where if they can get in, they should have some momentum going into it because they've got the Titans, the Browns, the Broncos, and the Steelers for their last 4. But I want to see them do this against a good team.
For sure. And that's the biggest thing.
Step up and hold a good team.
Yeah. No, that's the biggest thing that we want to see. I want to be able to talk about this defense without the initial qualifier of the last 2 quarterbacks they've played. But something important to remember about the Eagles as we come into this game, looking at their most recent stats being very good, they also most recently have played Daniel Jones and Deshaun Watson. So fun little twist. Same 2 previous opponents for the Bengals and the Eagles as they get ready for this weekend. We will have a much more in-depth preview of that matchup on Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on Chatterbox Sports and then immediately after in podcast form. For this edition of Chatterbox Bengals, thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Before you get out of here, make sure you like the stream, download the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. For Jacob Tissett, for Craig Sanklin, we thank you guys a ton. Hoo day, and we'll catch you next time.